Welcome to the Tim Booker channel, where wisdom is worth spreading. Wishing you an enjoyable listening experience. Today, I'm going to decipher a book for you called, What I Learned Losing $1 Million. This book primarily discusses how we should minimize losses in investments. The book is quite renowned, hailed as a milestone in the field of trading psychology and considered essential reading for investors. It's also one of the notable works by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the author of The Black Swan, which was inspired in part by this book. Taleb himself regards it as a treasure among investment and financial literature. This book was published quite some time ago, back in 1994, but it has remained a bestseller in the United States for many years and has received numerous business book awards. When we think about investing, most of us naturally wonder how to make more money and achieve that goal. In essence, there are two ways to go about it. The first is to learn from others' successful experiences to increase your earnings, and the second is to review others' failures to reduce your losses. Most people would likely choose the first option, learning from the successes of others in their investment journey. However, this book tells you that the majority of people are actually approaching it the wrong way. To truly succeed in the game of investing, it's not so much about learning from success but rather about extracting lessons from failure. The author of this book, Jim Paul, had first-hand experience proving this point. What does that mean exactly? We'll delve into the details later. The author of this book, Jim Paul, was the first vice president in charge of the International Energy Division at Morgan Stanley. He also served as a director of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and a member of the Commodity Exchange Committee. He spent a total of 25 years navigating the world of futures trading and held various roles, including retail trader, floor trader, pit trader, and research department head. Even if you're not familiar with these terms, it's clear that the author's personal journey was incredibly diverse and successful. Due to his rich and successful experiences, he inevitably became somewhat overconfident. However, there came a time when he suffered a colossal defeat in one of his investments that left him emotionally and financially devastated. Just how significant was this loss? He lost a genuine $1 million within a mere 75 days, wiping out his 15-year track record of successful investments. It was after experiencing this profound failure that the author, in collaboration with another colleague who shared a similar experience, decided to write this book, the one you're currently listening to. So, what did I learn after losing $1 million? Next, I'll break down this book into 3 parts for you. In the first part, I'll share the author's story and explain why learning from failure is more crucial in investments than learning from success. In the second part, we'll discuss how minor losses can escalate into catastrophic failures. And in the third part, we'll explore solutions for avoiding psychological traps and reducing losses. Alright, let's start with the first part of the story. Let's begin with the author's background. The author, Paul, was born into an ordinary family in the countryside of the United States. His family wasn't wealthy, and from a very young age, he understood the importance of money because it was the key to acquiring good things. At the age of 9, he took on his first job as a caddy at a country golf club. It was during this job that he got a glimpse of the lives of wealthy individuals who drove fancy cars, carried beautiful women with gold jewelry, and played with the finest golf clubs. So, what separated these wealthy golfers from people like the author, who worked as ball retrievers outside the course? The author noticed a common thread among these affluent individuals: they had all received an education, at least attended college. Moreover, he observed that high-income jobs typically required higher education. In other words, if you wanted to earn more money, you needed a higher level of education. With a clear understanding of the rules of the game within the wealthy circles, the author set his sights on one goal: attending college. He worked and studied simultaneously, eventually earning admission to a prestigious university. During his studies, he became even more convinced that there were rules for everything, and as long as he understood these rules, he could achieve excellent results with minimal effort. It was like passing an exam: if you got a passing grade, like a C, that was enough. As a result, the author mostly settled for C grades. He proved, time and again, that he could replicate success as long as he could find the rules behind it and follow them. His repeated successful experiences made him increasingly confident, to the point where he felt different from ordinary people. For instance, he had never played a particular card game before, but just because he thoroughly understood the game rules, he emerged from a single game with a pocketful of winnings, enough to cover 7 semesters of tuition. Furthermore, he rarely attended classes, typically reading an entire book the day before an exam and still acing it while his friends struggled to pass. These achievements boosted his confidence, and he believed that he excelled at whatever he set his mind to. After graduating, he entered an officer training school in the military and viewed the training and education as another game with rules to follow. By adhering to these rules, he graduated as an honor student and later became an instructor at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, becoming the youngest second lieutenant ever to hold the position of chief instructor. In essence, everything in his life had gone incredibly smoothly, and during his upward trajectory, he continued to gain the attention and appreciation of those around him, especially from his superiors. At the young age of 23, Paul achieved something remarkable. He held the highest level clearance for nuclear weapon storage, a secret core to all military organizations. This level of trust the military placed in him was significant. So, Paul could be considered a successful person by any measure. However, these successes only further solidified his belief that he was superior to most people. As we mentioned earlier, his lifelong goal had always been to make money. He attended college to achieve that. Yet, even with his esteemed military position, the salary was not high. So, you can probably guess what he did next. He chose to leave the military. After leaving the military, he decided to attend college again, but this time, he pursued a major related to handling money, a master's degree in business administration, MBA. It was during this time that Paul decided to become a stockbroker. Along the way, there was an interesting incident that reaffirmed his belief that having a grasp of the rules made him invincible. During the interview process for a certification company, he encountered a particularly challenging test known as the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, MMPI. The test was complex, but Paul found a shortcut. He located a book called The Observer's Brain in a bookstore, which contained a wealth of information about the theoretical basis behind the test, as well as experimental data from neuroscience. Paul delved into the book, thoroughly researching it, and as a result, he smoothly passed the MMPI test with a high score. In summary, Paul obtained this job quite smoothly. With such a promising start, Paul smoothly entered the securities trading market, and once inside, he was like a fish in water. His life seemed to be on a fast track, and his career soared. So, let's take a moment to recap what we've discussed. In essence, we've been narrating an inspirational story of someone who started from the bottom and climbed to the peak of life. However, this is only the first half of the story. A significant turning point in Paul's life was about to happen just when he believed he had reached the pinnacle of success. In the trading market, the price of lumber began to plummet, and the trading volume of the orders he handled dropped by more than 80%. Simultaneously, other markets he was involved in, such as the soybean market, experienced a sharp downturn. In less than 3 months, he lost a staggering $1.5 million, wiping out all the money he had earned over 15 years. Not only did the brokerage firm liquidate his account, but they also seized all his assets. This meant that all the achievements he had worked for over the years vanished in an instant, and almost all his accumulated wealth disappeared overnight. Do you remember what we've been saying all along? Paul's greatest skill was summarizing patterns. So, he thought, since his investment strategy had failed, what should he do? Let's summarize some patterns. Why not take a look at how others do it and derive a set of successful patterns? But when he delved into this, he found something astonishing. There were no consistent patterns in investing. Every successful person had a different approach. For instance, renowned investor John Templeton, who achieved an average growth of 15% over 31 years, advised diversification, meaning not putting all your eggs in one basket. On the other hand, William O'Neill, another highly successful stock trader, almost on par with the previous one, argued that diversification was just a way of avoiding ignorance. So, he advocated against diversification, and it's not just him, others have said the same. Take Warren Buffett, often hailed as the Oracle of Omaha and the stock market guru. He said to concentrate your investments, not diversify. Whether they said to diversify or concentrate, these individuals were all undeniably successful. So, who should you listen to? In other words, how can you ensure a successful investment? The truth is, there may not be a specific, guaranteed pattern for success. So, what can you do? Nobel laureate physicist Niels Bohr once said, "The opposite of a profound truth may well be another profound truth." This statement has some merit. This is when Paul decided to change his perspective. He adopted a completely opposite approach to what he had been doing. Instead of focusing on successful experiences, he started concentrating on investment losses and failed cases. And he made a remarkable discovery: the viewpoints of experts on losing money were surprisingly unanimous. In other words, learning from successful experiences might not necessarily lead to success, as it's uncertain. However, issues that lead to failure are certain. So, if this is certain, let's grab onto this certainty and understand what causes failure. When Jim Paul reviewed these failed cases, he found something intriguing: most failures weren't caused by external factors but rather by subjective factors within ourselves. Next, in the second part, let's discuss how these psychological factors lead to investment failure. We all know that in any business, losses are inevitable. This is an objective fact. However, understanding this fact and truly accepting it on a personal level are two different things. People deeply involved in the trading market often find it difficult to admit defeat because they tend to perceive losses as their own failure, incompetence, or mistake. At the same time, they view profits as success or correctness. In this book, losses are categorized into two types. The first is called external losses, which are objectively real, like losing a game, a competition, or money in investments. This is a commonly used meaning in our daily lives. The second type, contrasting with external losses, is referred to as internal losses. What does this mean? It's related to our individual psychological factors, such as loss of self-control, dignity, love, or rationality. It purely depends on our personal experiences. For example, losing $100 in the stock market might be just a meal expense for one person, not a big deal. But for someone else, that $100 could represent several days' worth of groceries. This difference in emotional subjective experience is what we call subjective loss. When external losses are transformed into internal losses, meaning objective losses become subjective losses, many people may find it hard to accept the result of their losses. Losses in market investments often go through this transformation process. Losing money is simply an objective loss, a normal event. However, you might unconsciously bring in negative emotions, considering the loss as a failure or a mistake. These internal losses often lead us to make emotional decisions, ultimately turning minor losses into irrecoverable catastrophic losses. So, how can we prevent objective market losses from turning into internal losses? To address this question, we first need to understand how this transformation process occurs. The author discovered that this process is very similar to the psychological process people go through when facing death. He referred to the 5 psychological stages that patients go through after learning about their illness and applied them to internal losses, dividing them into 5 stages. Let's take a closer look. Firstly, when the market experiences losses, traders often don't know how to react. They become uncertain, much like terminally ill patients who suddenly feel lost. This leads to the first stage called denial. In this stage, traders deny the possibility of the market getting worse and believe that future trends will still be favorable. They think trading is always profitable, and they can continue to bet. However, they avoid calculating how much they've lost. This denial is similar to patients who, upon receiving a diagnosis, initially deny the results. When it becomes impossible to deny the fact, traders enter the second stage called anger. They may get angry with their family or blame the market, similar to how some patients, after accepting their illness, harbor resentment and wonder why the illness had to happen to them. They might project their anger onto doctors, nurses, or family members. Next is the third stage, bargaining. Investors start to compromise, hoping that the market will recover. They promise to close their positions as soon as the market turns around. This is similar to patients praying to a higher power, hoping to delay the inevitable as long as possible. Then comes the fourth stage, where investors become increasingly frustrated with their losses, possibly leading to depression. They might lose their appetite, have trouble sleeping, and lose interest in everything. Ultimately, they have to face the inevitable reality, accepting their losses and exiting the market. This is similar to patients accepting the inevitable outcome of their illness. In investment, the transformation of external losses into internal losses, compared to losses in a basketball game or a gambling session, is more likely to happen. Why is that? Consider this: in events like basketball games, there are clear time points. Once the game ends or the dice stop rolling, everything is over. The losses caused by these individual events are explicit, and the result is clear: you either win or lose. There's no room for interpretation. However, investments are different. They involve a continuous process where participants must make constant decisions, and every decision affects whether they make a profit or incur losses. During this process, you have no knowledge of where the future trend is heading or when it will end. You can choose not to admit it as a loss and keep believing that you'll make money in the future. But these emotional decisions often lead to increasing losses. So, how can you reduce losses and prevent them from expanding further? The solution is simple in theory: avoid being controlled by emotions and making irrational decisions. At this point, we must mention the psychological fallacies that mislead us into making irrational decisions. The author introduces 6 types of psychological fallacies in the book, and I will discuss the 3 most common ones. The first psychological fallacy is called the Monte Carlo fallacy, also known as the gambler's fallacy. It suggests that people tend to believe that after a series of random events, the probability of the same event occurring again significantly decreases. In simpler terms, we often think that after a streak of successes, failure is inevitable, and vice versa. But is this true? Not necessarily. Many events are independently random, meaning each occurrence is not influenced by previous ones. For example, when you roll a die, the probability of getting a 1 on the first roll is the same as getting a 1 on the second or third roll. The second psychological fallacy is our optimism bias. We tend to believe that the probability of good things happening is higher than the probability of bad things happening. For instance, people might think that winning the lottery is more likely than getting struck by lightning. In reality, the probabilities are often quite similar, both being extremely low. The third psychological fallacy is our tendency to underestimate the likelihood of rare events occurring. In other words, when an event has a very low probability, we often believe it will never happen. However, small probability does not equal zero probability. For example, in a game of poker, you might find it highly unlikely to get a hand with all spades, but players who frequently play poker might have encountered this situation because the probability of any particular hand is the same. In summary, to reduce losses, we must minimize the influence of these emotional factors. All emotional reactions stem from our concerns about uncertainty. Therefore, the key is finding a way to coexist with uncertainty. Next, in the third part, we will discuss these methods for handling uncertainty and risk. There are 3 methods to deal with this kind of uncertainty risk. The first one is the engineering method. You can think of it as an engineer's approach. Engineers always strive to find the best solutions to problems, so the engineering method aims to control variables that affect the outcomes as much as possible. The second method is called the gambling method. This approach is entirely opposite to the engineering method. It's purely a matter of luck, treating the future as a gamble. Both of these methods have their extremes. The former requires a high level of analytical skills, while the latter relies entirely on chance. The third method is called the speculative method, and it falls in between the other 2. It's important to note that speculation here is a neutral term without any negative connotations. This method involves a rational examination and systematic analysis of the uncertain future, without depending entirely on scientific laws to predict future trends. It's not a complete unknown either. Successful investments, trades, and arbitrage often result from applying the speculative method to some extent. So, how do you use the speculative method? It requires careful planning in advance, making rational judgments before taking action. When to buy and when to sell, these are decisions you can control, even though you can't control the entire game. You must establish these principles and plans in advance, and once certain situations arise, stick to them. In essence, while you can't control the entire game in the market, you can control when to participate and when to exit. The key to winning in this game is to upgrade yourself from an individual player to a stable system and then engage with the market. What does upgrading yourself into a system mean? Think about why gamblers often lose to the casino. It's because they rely on intuition and luck, while the casino operates based on a data system with scientific mathematical calculations at every stage. To win, you need to elevate yourself into a data-driven system with clear steps and unwavering execution. In the investment market, it's the same principle. You need to establish principles before entering the market. It's best to write down these principles and plans and avoid changing them haphazardly, no matter what happens. Determine your investment goals in the market, how much money you want to make, what types of assets you plan to invest in, stocks, bonds, forex, futures, and at what point you will exit if you start losing money. Summing up what we've discussed, it boils down to one thing: to reduce losses, you must plan ahead. You need to anticipate and prepare for what actions to take in case certain situations arise. Moreover, when these situations do occur, you must act according to the principles you've set in advance. In conclusion, this book's main message can be summarized by borrowing from a theory mentioned by Daniel Kahneman in Thinking, Fast and Slow. The human brain is divided into two systems, one driven by emotions and intuition, fast system, and the other by rational analysis, slow system. The key to successful investing is to let the rational, slow system dominate your decision-making rather than letting the fast system, driven by emotions, take control. Ultimately, this book reminds us that, in many cases, we tend to view the whole picture from an individual perspective. In investment, everyone is an individual, but the entire investment market is a vast and complex system made up of countless individuals. To succeed in such a game, it depends on whether the levels of the players are equal. Just as mentioned earlier, gamblers often lose to the casino because the gambler operates on a system of intuition and luck, while the casino operates on a data system backed by scientific calculations. To win, you must elevate yourself into a data system. Make clear plans, and stick to them no matter what. This applies to the investment market as well. You need to establish principles before entering the market and, based on these principles, write down your plans. Regardless of what happens, do not change them arbitrarily. Determine your investment objectives, how much money you aim to earn, what assets you intend to invest in, stocks, bonds, forex, futures, and when you will exit if you incur losses. To sum it all up, everything we've discussed can be boiled down to one sentence: to reduce losses, you must plan ahead. You need to anticipate and prepare for what actions to take in case certain situations arise. Moreover, when these situations do occur, you must act according to the principles you've set in advance. So, with that, we've covered the main content of this book. To recap, today we've primarily addressed 3 questions. 1. We started with the author's real-life experiences, emphasizing the importance of learning from failures, just as much, if not more, than learning from success. Failures often highlight the issues that can lead to failure. 2. We discussed how small losses can escalate into catastrophic losses, analyzing the 5 stages of internal loss preparation for external losses and 3 crucial psychological fallacies. 3. Finally, we delved into the solution for reducing losses, establishing principles and avoiding impulsive actions. In essence, this book's core message is about upgrading your decision-making process into a stable algorithmic system that is driven by data, plans, and principles, rather than being guided by emotions. Thank you for listening, and congratulations on completing another book. We appreciate your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share with your family and friends. Wisdom is worth spreading to create a better future. Thank you, and goodbye.